might as well begin with 2050, not just because that's why we're here, because of the reinstallation of the work downstairs, but also because, well, I guess it's one of the pieces you're best known for. It first came to light in 1987, I believe. Before this,
it was first built in 1987 for Matt's Gallery, and I suppose it could be declared as my party piece. It's one piece that I'm known for, and there's some extraordinary stories that will back that up. For example, I was once doing an exhibition in Tel Aviv, and I was showing a show with a Jewish artist who said, "Have I ever been to Jerusalem?" I said no. He invited me to Jerusalem, showed me around the old city and the wall. And on the way back, asked me if I'd ever been to a kibbutz. I said no. So he said, "Come and meet your family. Your team is playing in the World Cup." It was 1994-92. And the family there had never really travelled. They'd only been to England or London. The only time in their life they'd travelled. They knew nothing about art. They only knew one artwork on the planet. It was a room filled with oil. And I said, "That's me."
So the origin of the work, the name 2050 refers to the actual material itself, doesn't it?
I wanted an ambiguous title. I think the title should always run parallel with the work and not give too much away. When you used to buy, I don't know if it's still true of multi-grade oil, but when you buy oil for your car, as I used to, you go into the shop and ask for 2050. It's actually the specific graphite count to oil, the lubricant, the graphite lubricant. So it was a kind of a machine number.
Yeah.
It wasn't giving too much away, in the same way as the work is completely ambiguous when you first encounter.
And what was the original idea? What was the kind of, what was the impetus for it? What were you trying to achieve?
With most ideas, or with most pieces, they come from many, moments that are gathered out of, out there. And they kind of sit for a while and digest. But with 2050, there was a core idea which was incredibly simple, actually. It wasn't a complex idea, and it was really based around a previous exhibition I made at Matt's Gallery. I introduced myself to Robin Klasnick at the gallery in 1985, and there I built a foundry in the space, which, would be impossible to do anywhere nowadays. And actually poured 1,500 weight of aluminium as a beam, so it was wedged into the room. So it was very much about site specificity. It was very much about a piece of work that could only exist in that one space. If you took it out, you'd have to store it up. When I was invited back 2 years later, the problem about exhibiting in a space that invites individual artists to make site-specific work, which was the gallery policy, I just felt that the space was very loaded with ghosts of previous works. Now you can either defend yourself against that, protect yourself from that, or you can encompass it and try and take it beyond what, your fears about that art. And having made a mould and poured liquid into it, and then exposed it, the idea was perhaps I'll make the whole room a mould and pour something into it to transform the space. I mean, my basic agenda is I challenge our preconceptions we have of the world as a sculptor, and I do that through playing with structures. And structures we think we know, and because we think we know them, we bring our preconceptions to them. And then when you see it's not what you think, you have to re-examine all those kind of preconceptions that we carry. So hence, I wanted to make something. And in terms of trying to transform a vision of the space, I wanted to fill the space up. And the best way of explaining it was I was intrigued by the notion of the target as a space of conundrum. I like the idea that you could go into a police box and inside was bigger than outside. How could I do that with a sculpture? How could I make, because I play with voids of spaces, I wanted to somehow build the sculptural TARDIS. So I knew there was a sense of illusion that had to happen. But what was intriguing at that point was in all the examination of trying to find a solution to the dilemma, that I found a material that had been through its own transformation over millions of years. And that oil, which was just not on the agenda, the sculptor's agenda, or vocabulary for materials, and hence that's how the piece came about filling up the room with something to change it, and to fill it up with a contaminated material, which was a liquid, which seemed to have no surface or depth or volume. Suddenly it was the most intriguing thing for me, because it was just so anti what we knew as sculpture at that time.
Yeah, and indeed it doesn't, it reflects, but it also sucks in the light, and it's very opaque. There's no way of penetrating the surface, and obviously what a lot of people may not know is how deep the tank actually is and how much oil is in there, which of course you play with the notion of that. I don't know whether you want to
It's the most common question, and I've always said it's as deep as you want it to be. But when I was in Japan in 1994, at the Mito Art Tower, making a piece of work for an exhibition called Another World, when I was asked out there, I said it was deeper than 4